I'm Erica. I just left my father's retirement party, clutching an untouched glass of champagne. A decision is churning in my mind, one that will shatter his so-called empire. I'm not merely walking away from the family, I'm taking the very thing that has held them up all these years. The party was held at the opulent Harborcrest Society Hall. The place reeked of old money, with air conditioning that smelled of luxury and floorboards polished to a mirror finish, reflecting the hidden sins of the guests. There were 200 people there, not friends but sharks in expensive suits and silk dresses. They were the power players of the local economy, all there to pay homage to my father, Victor Reed. Victor stood on the stage, bathed in a golden spotlight, looking every bit the patriarch. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his designer suit cost more than most people earn in a year. He was telling the story of Reed Logistics, painting a picture of grit and determination while conveniently leaving out the ruthless side of his business. I stood in the back, near the heavy velvet curtains, holding a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking. The bubbles had long since gone flat. I watched as he praised his wife, my step-mother, Isabella, and his son, my step-brother, Ryan. Ryan, who had an MBA but had never done an honest day's work in his life, thought logistics was all about moving boxes, not data. Then Victor mentioned me. The spotlight swung my way, hitting me like a physical blow. He laughed and called me his wild card, saying I had no degree, no career, just drifting. The room erupted in laughter. They laughed because Victor told them it was funny, and to them, I was exactly what he said I was: uneducated, worthless. But tonight, I decided to break the silence. I stepped forward, raising my glass.
"Cheers, Dad," I said.
The room went quiet in confusion. I looked him in the eye and said, "To the empire you built, and to the reality of who actually keeps it standing." I dropped the glass, and it shattered on the floor, a sound like a gunshot in the silent room. As I walked out, Isabella and Victor chased after me. Isabella grabbed my arm, hissing that I was embarrassing them. Victor, red, faced with anger, ordered me to go back in and apologize. But I was done. I told him I had returned the allowance he sent me every month for the past 8 years, and that he had no idea who I really was. It all started when I was a child. My mother died when I was 10. I don't remember her funeral clearly, just a blur of black umbrellas and heavy hands on my shoulder. But I remember her hands, thin and almost translucent, squeezing mine before I went to sleep, as if trying to transfer her strength to me. 2 years later, Victor remarried. Isabella came into our lives with her son, Ryan. The house that was once filled with my mother's love became a cold place. At the dinner table, there was a strict hierarchy. Victor spoke first, usually about business. Isabella agreed with him or complained about the help. Ryan bragged about his achievements. I was invisible, like a piece of furniture in the corner. When I brought home good grades, Victor would dismiss them, saying the teachers were grading on a curve. But when Ryan brought home mediocre grades, Victor would worry about getting him a tutor. He always told me that girls didn't need to overthink things, that I should just find a nice husband. My only ally was my grandmother, Eleanor Reed. She was nothing like Victor. She was a strong, willed woman who had run the family finances from the shadows for decades. Every Sunday, she would call me on the landline. She was the only one who asked me real questions, who listened to my thoughts. She taught me to be invisible and use it to my advantage. She told me to watch Victor's hands when he talked about business, to notice if Isabella touched her necklace when she asked about money. I started to observe everything, and I realized that the Reed family was a machine fueled by ego and deceit. When I was 20, I was a sophomore at the State University studying business administration with a focus on logistics. I had a partial scholarship and worked 2 part-time jobs, but I still needed Victor for the rest of my tuition. Then came the family meeting. Victor told me that the company was facing financial difficulties and that they couldn't support 2 tuitions. Ryan had been accepted into an expensive MBA program, and they needed to prioritize his education. I argued that I was a good student with an internship lined up, but Victor dismissed me, saying I wasn't built for the corporate world. I was heartbroken. I remembered the promise he made to my mother before she died, that he would make sure I got an education. but he chose Ryan over me. I packed my things and left. I found out later that they weren't actually in financial trouble. Victor had bought a new yacht, and Isabella had had expensive plastic surgery. They just didn't want to spend money on me. I moved to Kansas City. I rented a small studio apartment next to a 24-hour auto repair shop. I worked as a barista in the morning and an administrative assistant at a logistics company in the afternoon. At the logistics company, I learned everything I could. I analyzed the data, noticed inefficiencies, and found solutions. One day, the owner, Mr. Harris, was worried about a losing route. I showed him that the problem was the routing, not the fuel. He was impressed and made me an operations analyst. I continued to learn on my own, taking free online courses and reading industry papers. I realized that business was about data, not just handshakes and golf games. I started to build a system which I named Midnight Logistics. For years later, I incorporated Midnight Logistics. I kept a low profile, hiring a proxy, Mr. Thompson, to be the public face of the company. We took on clients that the big firms ignored and used our software to optimize their operations. Then, one day, a call came from Reed Logistics. They were in trouble, having lost major contracts and facing high fuel costs. They wanted us to audit their system and install our software. I knew it was the perfect opportunity. I sent Mr. Thompson to the meeting and charged them double our standard rate. For 2 years, we ran Reed Logistics better than Victor ever could. Their profit stabilized, and Victor took credit for the efficiency. But I was waiting for the right moment. Then came the invitation to Victor's retirement party. I knew it was a chance to expose the truth. I decided to go and deliver the final blow. After I left the party, I received a message from Mr. Thompson. Reed Logistics was panicking, sending a renewal contract with desperate terms. I typed a simple reply: "Do not renew. Prepare termination." The next day, I went to my lawyer, Ms. Carter, to review the termination clause. She confirmed that it was ironclad. But there was a rumor that someone was trying to find out who owned Midnight Logistics. I knew I had to act fast. I also received a call from Uncle Henry, Victor's younger brother. He had been pushed out of the company years ago. He told me he had evidence of Victor's embezzlement and fraud. He sent me a file that showed Victor had used my college fund to cover up Ryan's hit and run incident and had been leasing warehouses from his own shell company at inflated prices. I realized that this was not just about a business contract. It was about justice. I decided to go to the board meeting of Reed Logistics. At the board meeting, I walked in with Ms. Carter and Mr. Thompson. I revealed that I was the owner of Midnight Logistics and that I had been the one keeping Reed Logistics afloat for the past 3 years. Victor was in shock. He tried to deny everything, but I showed him the evidence. I gave them 2 options. Option A, I terminate the contract, the company collapses, and I hand over the evidence to the SEC. Option B, Victor resigns as chairman and CEO, Ryan is removed from the succession plan, and I agree to a 6-month transition contract. Victor finally realized he was checkmated. He resigned, and Ryan followed suit. I also announced the creation of the Amelia Reed Scholarship Fund, using my own money to replace the funds that Victor had stolen from me. As I walked out of the building, I took a deep breath. I was free. I had built my own empire, and I no longer needed Victor's approval. I was Erica, and I was defined by my own worth.